Okay, we're going to get started. We need to finish this meeting by 6 because of the primary election. So it's Tuesday, September 12th, 4:15, our September Education Committee meeting. And welcome back to school, everybody. Thank you. We are going to start then with informational items. We do have a couple presenters and presentations, so I want to kind of move through this as quickly as we can. Assistant Superintendent Amy Starzecki, do you want to present your monthly report?
Sure. The first item in my report is just an update on the Pathways to Teaching program. Back in the spring, we invited Dr. Bianco from the University of Colorado in Denver to share the program that she's developed and is implementing across other cities across the country, a program to increase educator diversity. And it starts with recruiting students in our schools, students of color who might be interested in going into education, creating courses for them to take at high school that also they can achieve or can gain college credit for and have an entry-level credit going into an education program. We're looking at a partnership with the College of St. Scholastica, and so those conversations have just started. But wanted to let you know that's ongoing work we'll be diving into this year with the hope that that course will be ready to be implemented next fall. So that's just an informational item. The second item here was our Staff Development Day. So August 29th, we had our district-wide Staff Development Day. This year it was a little bit different than the last few years. Oftentimes all staff come together at Denfeld as part of the whole Staff Development Day, and this time, due to our new ELA curriculum that was adopted at the elementary, the language arts curriculum, we made sure we had spent some time with the elementary classroom teachers providing some training, and I know Dr. Carey can speak a little bit to the fact that our materials that we purchased for them are in the back if you would like to take a look at what we have been working with our elementary folks with. We also provided some intervention training for elementary teachers that day, and each of our sites also were working through their improvement plans and the work that they're doing at the building level to provide staff development specifically for the work that they're doing at the site. So as well as lots of other groups of folks were working together that day as part of training and getting ready for the school year. So I was out and about. I know the superintendent was out and about, and I've heard very positive things from teachers and principals about the effectiveness of that day and that it was very effective, or a very good day for all staff. Lastly, I just wanted to let you know about an opportunity. I am working with our principals as part of a study group, book study. The book down below is Courageous Conversations About Race, a field guide to achieving equity in schools. This is specifically a book that we've had a few other district leaders read and it comes highly recommended. There are activities and guiding questions kind of at the end of each chapter, and I'll be facilitating some discussions with our principals at our monthly principal meetings. But it does recommend that all district leaders read the book, and so I believe the superintendent has purchased a copy of the book for all board members if you're interested.
It's supposed to be here Thursday.
And it will be here Thursday. So you are welcome to read that text as we are doing that work at the district level. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you. Member Oswald and then Member Welty.
I just had a question about the Pathways to Teaching. Should only a few students sign up for it? Are we committed to having that section?
Good question.
And is it going to, become a controversy that they could use that FTE in some other capacity if it was eliminated, or not, or if it was held on to if there's only a couple students, that kind of thing?
To answer your question, yes, we're committed to this program. Part of the work that we will be doing this fall and winter will be identifying the teachers who are going to teach the course, and then working with those teachers to help us get the information out to students so that we're recruiting students to take this as well, and working with our principals and our counselors to identify students. So our hope is that we have many students who want to be a part of this class, but we are committed to running this course. Oftentimes when you develop a new course, and Dr. Carey can speak to this, it takes a little bit of build-up time, but we're planning to run this course.
And so, just to follow up, if not enough students of color, because I know this is designed around growing your own with students of color, would it be opened to more of a general population if it didn't fill up?
We haven't got to those level of details yet. Okay. We're just in the planning stages of course development and recruiting our teachers, but I am looking forward to getting some teachers on board to help us with some of those conversations.
Member Welty.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mine is really a point of personal privilege or convenience. I did promise Dr. Carey that I wouldn't ask many questions because I was so thirsty, but I'm hoping somebody has a key to the back room so we could have a...
Melinda went to get it.
She went to get it? Oh, that's so good. Thank you.
I went to the back room, but not the fridge.
Well, the fridge I understand is a problem too, so if I go back there and you hear this terrible pounding, thanks.
Did you touch it? Oh, I'll just go back.
Okay, does anybody else have any more questions from the Assistant Superintendent's report? Okay, we're going to move on then to the first informational presentation by Dr. Michael Carey and Dr. Tanya Lake about college and career readiness. And we did receive a handout as well as thank you for emailing ahead of time this as well. And I'll let you take over. Are you going to be using the...
They decided to just do paper.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Want me to lead? Okay, so what we wanted to do first is provide you a little background in terms of the expectations of the state and laws and requirements surrounding career and college readiness. Give you kind of a brief overview around some of the program pieces that we engage in. Then I think Dr. Lake is going to share a little bit about our most recent ACT results, and then we'll share some of our ideas kind of moving forward and how we would improve where we're at and improve our programming that we provide, and then have some opportunity for questions. Before we get started, I do need to direct everybody's attention to what would be the back of the second page in your handout. On the top slide where it says our process and supports, if you go down to the third bullet, I know this is getting a little convoluted, but the third bullet where it says student access to counselors, career centers, and achievement centers. I was putting this slide together and was not able to check before this was printed on our achievement centers, which our OEE plan has changed the model for the next 3 years of our achievement integration plan. So we no longer formally support an achievement center, but we are still providing support in different ways to the students that used to serve. So if you could cross out achievement centers there, the copy that's in the board book has been updated on the digital board book, and then I think anything that gets saved for future reference will be the updated copy. All right, so with that little piece out of the way, you can really see there on the first page the state's definition of career and college readiness as it exists in statute. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's there for your reference if you would so desire. I want to talk a little bit really briefly about what the state requires. At the end of this presentation, there's some appendices there, and in the appendices it actually kind of states the very formal language requirement by requirement, so that's there for your reference. But just in summary, what the state's really looking at is they want to make sure that your curriculum is aligned to standards, right? They put a lot of time and effort to make sure that the standards or expectations for student learning are at a really high level. And so step one is just making sure that your courses are well aligned to the curriculum and set high expectations. That's the first requirement for the career and college readiness expectations from the state. The next piece is that you do a career interest inventory and have a place for students to keep a plan. What we use as our tool is MCIS. It's a common system used throughout the state and country. It has a number of different interest inventory tools and other pieces within it. And so students can take the interest inventory, which helps them kind of begin to identify areas that they might have as career or personal interests. Tells them, I think, some information about courses and other things they may want to consider as a part of those interests. And then the system provides them with a repository where they can build a plan and then start to keep kind of a digital portfolio of some of their work as they move forward. So we have the MCIS as the tool that we use to support that piece. Another requirement is that they also have to set career and/or college goals and track progress. Again, the MCIS is a tool that we have and provide that can serve that purpose. So then if you go down to the next slide, other requirements are that we want to make sure we have rigorous career-oriented courses, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Provide access to career and college-oriented counseling services, and have local collaboration that provides opportunities for students to learn more about their college options and careers. So those are really the kind of fundamental requirements in summary that exist within the law. And again, you can see those in more detail in the appendix at the back. So in terms of our process, what do? The district has invested considerable resource over the last 3 years to make sure that we align our curriculum to standards, and that's work that as standards change, we continue to do as just a part of normal practice in the curriculum department. So that's an ongoing process that we kind of always endeavor to keep improving. We do have students participate in using the MCIS beginning in the middle level, and they start by taking career interest inventories and then looking and learning more about the tool. We do have some checkpoints throughout their high school years where they can do some more work in MCIS and be able to add to that portfolio. But as you'll see when we get to the next step piece, I really think that's an area we can improve upon going forward. Student access to counselors and career centers, you'll notice that one of the pieces was that access to counseling services. We have a lot of work that our counselors do to help provide information to students on college options, career options, and how to navigate financial aid processes. That's kind of an ongoing thing that our counselors do as part of their normal and routine duties. So we have that piece in place. And we have made a point of emphasis recently to try to provide and create more career-focused opportunities through our CTE program. Examples of that would be kind of the revamping of our engineering programs and the introduction of the Fab Labs. We've introduced aerospace physics as a course that's now in its second year in our high schools. And we're also making progress towards a biomedical chemistry. We're kind of in the early stages of investigating what that would look like at the high school level. So as an organization, we have made intentional efforts to add more courses. Brad Vietz, who's our Career and Tech Ed coordinator, has also really been working hard with Mike Zwock, to be able to improve our career experience options out in the community, where students can actually learn a job or skill on site doing real world work and receive credit for that. So they kind of started improving and growing that program this last year and have more ideas for that moving forward. So those are some pieces. Other pieces that we do to support this, we've all had conversations about our advanced placement in college and the schools programs. I think at last count we offer 17 AP or CITS course options in our high school course catalog, which is I think a very strong showing of college-ready options for students that we provide. And we, through those options and other articulation agreements and programming, we do a lot of collaboration with our local colleges, with UMD, with St. Scholastica, with LSC, with Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, and we also collaborate with local industry rather frequently through our CTE programs, where we get students out into those workspaces to actually see the good work that's happening in our community and local industries so they can see how their learning applies to the real world of work. So those are just a very brief overview of some of the things we're doing. From here, I want to turn it over to Dr. Lake, who's going to talk a little bit about the ACT and our current results, and then I think we'll shift into conversation about next steps for improving our career and college readiness programs.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk about the ACT. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. It's a college readiness exam. It's considered a curriculum-based measure that measures readiness in 4 areas. It measures English, math, reading, and science, and really it's determining whether or not students are ready to pass college courses like college English, college algebra, college social science, and college biology. If they meet those benchmark scores, it's expected that they would earn at least a C in a college course. I just want to point out that the year-to-year comparisons are they're difficult to make because our participation requirements at our state level have changed over time. In a future slide, I'll show you how that's impacted our participation numbers, and you can draw some of your own conclusions when looking at some of the other data alongside it. So what I'm talking about right now, these are the results for our graduating class of 2017. This isn't including the 11th grade students who took the exam last spring. This is just the graduating class of 2017. So on the next slide, you can see since 2013 how our numbers of students tested have varied over time. We had a peak with our graduating class of 2016 with 658 students. That peak was a result of that being a required test at that time. We had all but 10-ish students take the exam. You can see that last year we had 495 students, which is still that's still a sizable number of students. It's about 80%, 82% of our graduating class took the ACT at some time. But you can see the next column over that 2016, it was required for that cohort of students to take the exam. The others, it's been strongly encouraged, but optional. Prior to 2016, students took the exam on their own time on a Saturday and needed to get themselves there, needed to make that a priority. Since then, it's been offered at their schools during the school day. The next thing we're going to look at is just our district composite scores over time. You can see we did have a slight increase from 21.0 to 21.7, which is above the state and national averages. You can see that the nation stayed relatively stable, and we saw a little bit of an increase with at the state level. But again, those year-to-years are really tough to make when we're talking about different groups of students. The next slide looks at the percent of students ready for college-level coursework, meaning they met the benchmark scores for those content areas. The district is above the state in English, in social science, and on par with the state for college biology. We are below the state in college algebra. If we look back to last year's scores, you can see, well, you can't see, I can tell you, and you can trust me and look back at your old presentations, I guess. But we did make increases in all 4 areas over last year. One of the things that you've heard me talk about each year when I talk about the ACT scores is the importance of core or more. ACT really emphasizes that importance, that students are taking a sequence of classes that are considered core or more. So that means in the area of math, it's 4 or more years of math, of high school math. English and science, it's 3 years, and social studies, it's 3 years apiece. So I just wanted to point out that beginning in 2015, the percent of our students taking core or more was 93%. And part of that has to do with students who took the exam were students who did so on their own time on a Saturday. They were probably students who already were planning to go to college and knew that they needed that as an entrance exam. The next year's graduating class, you can see core or more, was 73%, and that's because we really had a wide range of students taking our test, those who maybe hadn't considered college in the past. So their coursework leading up to that, we didn't have as many students who were in that group of students considered taking core or more. We had 75% this last year, but one of the things you can notice is depending on the percentage of students taking core or more, it's not causal, but we can say that there is a relationship between the two, that you see this ACT scores are higher when we have a greater number of students taking that core or more. The next page looks at our student groups by ethnicity. You can see the numbers of students tested. If it's under 10, you can see that there isn't a score reported for data privacy reasons. But you can see that our numbers are pretty low for our students of color taking the exam. The participation rates are low. You can also see that there is a significant achievement gap on our ACT scores. The last thing you can see too is if we look at by ethnicity or student group, we can see that the percentage of students taking core or more, there's quite a variation there too. We see some disparities. So some things we can take away from this is there was a significant decrease in the number of students who took the ACT from our graduating classes of 16 to 17, and that's due to the participation requirements. That difference in participation requirements makes it difficult to compare year to year. You can see that our district did increase slightly over last year, and we are slightly above the state and national levels. District's percentage of students meeting college benchmarks were greater than the state in 2 areas. I had mentioned that in a previous slide. We had some increases in the percentage of students meeting those college readiness benchmarks over last year. We know that coursework matters. That core or more is an important piece to doing better on the ACT. We do have gaps that exist in our participation in core or more type coursework, as well as our participation rate and as well as our performance. So, in terms of next steps, these are a combination of looking at our testing results, looking at what ACT suggests as best practice, and continuing with some of the work we're already doing.
So we just have kind of a bulleted list there of some of the next steps we've identified that we can certainly move forward on. The first is just to increase access for students to take the ACT. As Dr. Lake pointed out, as the requirements for taking the ACT have changed, so have our participation rates, but I think it's always best that we try to make this an option for as many students as possible. So the more of our students that we can have take the assessment, I think the better picture it gives us of our overall performance when it comes to career and college readiness over our whole student body. So I think we still want to promote and advocate as many students taking that test as possible. From my perspective, we certainly always want to continue to evaluate curriculum for areas for improvement, right? Not that this is 100% for sure, but when I take a look at these results and I see that we're above the state average or at state average in 3 of our 4 areas, the thing that automatically pops up in my head is why are we not at or above state average in the 4th, in this case math. So that might be a point of investigation for us in terms of both curriculum and instructional practice. So we want to use this data to make sure that we make informed decisions on the work we're doing. One of the things we've been discussing, and you'll see it as a question mark behind it because I still think we're in the investigative stage, is I think we could improve upon the work that we do in terms of helping kids understand their career and college options at a young age, and then understand what courses or course-taking patterns they might want to engage in to help support those goals and ideas that they have. We actually saw a great presenter when we were down at the MDE Back to School Conference in August who talked about Generation Z, which is our newest generation of students coming through. And one of the interesting research takeaways about this generation is that because of the escalating cost of college and some of the difficulties in finding jobs recently for new college graduates, they are more than any other cohort in recent history very, very interested in being certain about what they want to do for a career and planning very intentionally what that career looks like. So the thought of creating a more robust opportunity at the middle level for kids to explore that in advance of heading into high school, I think could be really beneficial for our students. So that's something we're going to look into and you may hear more about in the future. Improve continuity and cohesion between elements. I pointed out all those state requirements that they lay out for us. I really think we could do a better job as an organization following through and making sure that from the student and teacher perspective, they see how all these things connect to one another. Sometimes you can be doing a lot of good things, but if people don't see how those things connect, it doesn't have the same level of impact than when people understand the interconnection. And I think we really could improve the interconnection between some of these elements just by doing a better job of communicating to students and teachers what the purpose of each of these elements is and how they support one another. So that's something I think we can work on. We always want to explore more options for integrating required content into career-focused courses. I mentioned the biomedical chemistry piece. The superintendent has really made it very clear he would like us to try to do more integration so that kids can see the direct application of their learning in the work world. And so we'll continue to move forward with some of those pieces. Then some of the other parts are just making sure that we keep kids on track. Providing effective interventions to keep students on track to graduate. Part of that conversation is how we have opportunities to provide those interventions in a scheduled day. And so that's part of the reason we're doing the review of secondary schedules, is so that we can take a look at our schedule and how well that accommodates providing good intervention to keep kids on the path to graduation. Another piece you can see there is planned guidance activities specific to students' career and college aspirations. I think we do a nice job with our guidance counseling services, but we can always look at ways to better support that. Continue to leverage our partnerships. I think we've done a really good job in recent years of learning about our local industry, learning about what our university and college partners have to provide in the region, and trying to build strong relationships so that we can use our resources jointly to provide better opportunities for students. And you can see the impact of some of those in some of the new programs we've started. Brad could probably give you a litany of different tours and things where students have been able to see new industries. And you look at things like our Connect Tomorrow, where students get to go down and learn about different trades and industries that are in our community. I think we've done a nice job in that over the last few years, but we can always improve those. And then I think I already alluded to this one, but just strengthen the student understanding of career and college programs and supports and how they interconnect to help a student achieve their goals. I think we could do a better job of communicating with kids and parents so that they understand how those things support each other. So I think now is the time where we open the floor for questions. And
I have a couple, but I'll go ahead with Member Oswald first.
My first question is, you mentioned the MCIS planning tool. How long has the district been using that?
We've had access to MCIS for years. And I think originally that access was just used kind of sporadically where people wanted to. I know it was originally purchased through CTE with some of their dollars. Now we're trying to be more intentional about the use of that tool and help teachers understand that it's there. I still think we could improve upon the use of that tool, and I think a huge way to potentially improve that use would be by starting a middle level class where they're really digging into career interest and high school options, college options, and really get into that tool and how to leverage that to plan for their career.
I certainly hope if we do pursue that option, I think it's a good option, but we need more middle school time. to take another class. That's plain and simple.
We're really preliminary in the discussions, but part of that was we do have a computers class that we're talking about where we could blend what some of the skills we already teach into computers so that they're not missing those skills, but then expand the course description to really incorporate MCIS, and that is a required class for kids. So it would basically be just making different use of a course that students already take, so we wouldn't be adding a course to their load.
Sure, squeeze in more with less time. I like that. No, I understand budget constraints. I get it. But I would prefer that they have more time to explore more careers, because I believe that's really true, that kids need to explore and time to explore, and guided exploration really helps. My other point that I just want to make is that I really hope that we begin to focus on making sure our special ed kids are included in these planning processes and don't exclude them based on the fact that there are still a lot of assumptions that are systemic that include that our special ed student population aren't moving forward in higher education, and that's more problematic than you realize, and we can have a conversation about that later.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the assistant superintendent, but I know the two of us together have had a lot of conversations about making sure that we aren't removing our special ed students from core learning opportunities so that we ensure that they're getting the same access to learning as other students.
And that's part of our MTSS work, and I think that's been the most important message we've been trying to send, that when we're looking at students who receive special education services, they absolutely have to be part of core instruction and part of that Tier 1 instruction. The other piece is special ed has actually been a little bit ahead of the field when it comes to transition planning. It's always been a part of the IEP process, having kids think about what they want to do after high school, so their programming is aligned starting in middle school and through high school. But that's continued work we've been talking about with staff development, with our special education teachers. How do we continue to improve that transition planning?
I agree, but that only works for students that are ingrained in special ed. My personal experience differs greatly, and my son fell through cracks that shouldn't have been there.
Okay, Member Welty.
I was particularly interested in what you said about Generation Z, and in a moment I'll ask you maybe tell me what age group that is. The comment that they're intensely interested in choosing a course of college studies that makes sense for them in terms of a career that they'll have, rather than doing what we were told to do, just go to college, explore liberal arts, learn things, wander around randomly, and something will develop. I'm kind of impressed with that pragmatism, and also a little saddened by its necessity. So I found myself jotting down a number of vocational kinds of questions here. We have the kids doing a career interest inventory planning tool. I remember mine from 9th grade. I was supposed to end up being a landscaper, outdoor landscaper. Have we ever asked for student feedback on how they've regarded that kind of work? How useful it is to them, since they're so intensely career-oriented or looking for very precise training that will be useful to them at a later date?
To be honest, not to my knowledge. One of the things we have discussed is doing a better job of reaching out to our students to get their feedback, and using that feedback to impact, at least in my role, course offerings and other pieces that we provide, or options we provide for them. I can't say that we have done that, but it's definitely a good idea.
Well, it's easy for me as a school board member to suggest nice things for us to do that involve lots of staff time, sending out all kinds of questionnaires and compiling them all. But it just strikes me as something that might be a useful thing to do if we can find the time. I was also interested in the talk about let's see here. Exploring options for integrating required content into career-focused courses. When I was on the school board in the ancient days, we called it school to work, and we had, businesses and people like that coming in and working with kids and trying to have kids intern. From what you say, and from what I've heard, that still exists. I remember Al Chapelnik, who I think recently retired, did an awful lot of that and brought people in to talk about the kinds of things they do. how would what we're doing now along those lines maybe vary from the school to work model?
So part of it is making sure that we keep the portion you kind of just referenced strong and in place, and looking at a variety of career fields so that students have access to that. But I think what we're talking about is, I'll use engineering as an example. We have this cohort of engineers coming through that are nearing retirement, and to be a little bit stereotypical, many of those young men and women grew up on family farms. They had access to be able to work on machinery. They learned hands-on how things worked, and then their coursework helped with the theory behind why things worked, right? And you meld those two things together, the practical experience of how things work with the theory on why things work, and that's a pretty powerful experience. As people have moved away from the family farm and become more urban and the kids don't have some of those experiences, making sure that we provide embedded in our classes that hands-on experience to see how things work, and then combine that with the theory of why it works, is becoming more critical to have that happen in the classroom, because the context of people's lives is limiting sometimes access to that opportunity.
I understand that. We don't have a lot of kids with lots of old-fashioned machinery and farm kids anymore. And then just a final question. We talked about the next steps, ensure that students are taking the right kind of courses earlier in their schooling. Well, I keep thinking about it's almost a national initiative to just work on reading and math, and that works its way up through the elementary grades. And of course, those will always be important throughout your entire life. But what other kind of coursework, and at what point do you see it being integrated into our curriculum, do you see besides reading and math? Does it start in the middle school years? Do they have to wait to high school till they get something that would not be considered strictly reading and math?
So I think we could explore lots of options and opportunities there. And I don't really have a direct answer on when we should or shouldn't start that. I think there's the world's our oyster in terms of when we want to start that. But the piece that I think I would reference here is that, like you say, focusing on reading and math. I'm going to give just a quick example because I think it's more illustrative. I was once the principal of a building where I had teachers telling me, these kids don't read, they won't read, I can't get that kid to read. But I'd walk into the library and I'd see that kid sitting in the corner with his nose tucked in a snowmobile magazine or a hunting magazine, and he'd be reading it cover to cover. And I'd sometimes when I'd see that, I'd walk over and I'd go, hey, what you reading? Well, gosh, there's this new snowmobile that came out, and it's got this, this, and this, and the engine's got these new pieces, and it can do this. And do you realize the thing kicks out this kind of torque? From a 7th grade student. And you're like, that kid reads, right? He's just not reading what we're putting in front of him, right? And so part of it is, how do we build our courses around content that kids are interested in, and then support the building of reading and understanding in a context where they're already engaged and interested in the topic. And I think we definitely always have room to improve and grow there.
Well, that sounds like something that would tie in very much with that career interest inventory planning tool you're talking about. And that's why student feedback might be helpful, because if you've got somebody who's really interested in the snowmobile or whatever else and that particular thing, it would be nice to know if they have the sense that the school is directing them in a useful way to a direction they want to head this for their living at some time post high school.
I do want to point out one piece that I didn't mention in the presentation because it ties to a comment you made earlier, which is you said it's nice to throw out things that are nice to do, but you need to have some people to do it, right? Our Office of Education Equity, through their Achievement and Integration Plan, part of what they did for the next 3-year life cycle was add a Career and College Readiness Coordinator position to help us improve upon some of this kind of work so that we're supporting our students to better understand what their career and college options are. And so we actually do have a new staff position that could be leveraged to do some of the things you just suggested.
Member Johnston?
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Dr. Carey, about engineering. That's something I'm quite active in the American Society of Civil Engineers, and it's one of those things that we talk about a lot, and we have to look at meshing academic experience with actual hands-on experience, and that's one of those things that we are changing on a national level to push that hands-on stuff, because you say there isn't as many people growing up with hands-on stuff like there used to be at one time. So that's kind of interesting. So thank you for your comments on that. It was kind of interesting. A couple other comments, which I know that we know, but I know you mentioned this, is that the percentage of students taking the test from that are kids of color, and yeah, it is pretty low, and I don't know how to change that, but I know we're something around 8% African heritage, 8% American Indian heritage. Looks like we're doing somewhere around the 2 or 3%, somewhere in there. So yeah, somehow we can emphasize to them how important it is that this is, I'm not going to assure their success, but it's certainly something that I'm hoping that we can emphasize to our kids of color, that is a good step that we're offering for free that could help them out. So I'm hoping we can emphasize that a little bit more. Another thing you kind of mentioned, which I had to comment on, was the cost of college and sometimes a lack of jobs that are from some of the colleges are getting. It's a trend, I think, which is being acknowledged probably more and more. I know a lot of colleges, particularly the smaller colleges, are not having a good run at it because of the high expenses, and some of them are closing. I think we've all seen the news on that. And I think that's something, going back to career readiness and other things besides academic achievements, I think does show how important that is. I just got to end up with kind of which I hope everybody thinks is kind of funny and not a way to where we want to go. When I went to high school a long time ago, of course, we were separated into people that were going on to college and ones that weren't. And we separated our classes into P's and T's. And the P's were preparatory. And maybe some of you have heard this. Anybody know what the T's stood for? Terminal.
That was the professional description or the...
No, that was what we were P's and T's. All our classes were divided into P's and T's. This was in the 60s, of course, and they're showing we've obviously come a long way. Thank goodness from even sometimes words do mean something, and when you're putting somebody in a T, a terminal thing, that's kind of sad. So we've come a long ways, but thank you for some of those comments.
Okay. Chair Kirby?
Thanks. What does it cost to take the ACT?
So up until this coming spring, the way that it's worked is we contract directly with ACT. We get charged per student. It's, I believe, $55 per student. And then we get reimbursed from the state for that cost. Now moving forward, that has changed. We will be reimbursed from the state for students who qualify for free or reduced price lunch. There's also a caveat in there that we can't turn away students from taking the ACT if they can't pay for it. So essentially, we'll be paying for students who do not qualify or students who cannot afford to pay for it themselves.
And the rest pay for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Did I say that backwards? I think I might have said that backwards. Yeah, students who qualify for free or reduced price lunch, we will get a reimbursement for those students from the state. The others, we just need to pay for it.
Okay. Well, the others will be asked to pay this year to
Correct.
take the
Yeah.
ACT.
Yeah.
So they'll have a reduced rate if they choose to take the ACT during the day. For students who cannot pay or who qualify for free and reduced lunch, they will not have to pay that reduced rate.
Okay.
But it'll be a reduced rate as opposed to the cost that they would pay if they took it on a Saturday.
Okay. Another question was, I know Minnesota has been at the top of the states in their ACT scores, but I'm sure that we're comparing ourselves to the average. What do the best districts in the state have for their, I mean, is it 90%? Is it?
The best.
Well, say the people, the districts that are having, what's the term that's used here? Percent of, in college English, worse, 72%? What are the best districts?
Oh, yeah, I don't know that.
So we don't know where we stand. I mean, we could be a lot better.
Yeah, we could. We know where we stand in terms of the state average. I haven't looked individually at schools across the state. We know what the state average is.
All right, I have one last comment, really. One of our next steps is to continue to leverage partnership to provide career and college-oriented programming. One of the, I don't know if it's a problem, it could be an issue, is that if students only look at careers around here, that limits them. There's a big world out there, and it may mean moving away and going away and doing other opportunities. Nationally, I know fewer and fewer people are moving. I think if you look 30 years ago, 50% of the country had moved in the past 5 years or something. Now it's 25%. People are becoming more insular. But I think that the degree to which we can show students that there's other places besides here in this area would be a very good thing. It would broaden their opportunities. So that's just a comment.
Okay, Superintendent Grunstead?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the comparison. I know that Dr. Lake mentioned it earlier, and I just wanted to really highlight again that it's with the way that we've approached it as a state, it's getting harder to compare. When it's like before we required it, everyone, not all students took it. And then when we required it as a state, then it became a really good comparison because every student in the state was there, so you're comparing all of your students. And now that we're going more towards it's optional, but you have to provide it, some districts are taking, like we have, encouraged more students to take it. We've made arrangements that made it pretty easy for students to participate. And other districts maybe haven't taken that same approach, or maybe not encouraged all of their students to take it like we have. And so you start singling out students who are taking it and who aren't. And so you really have to look at what are they doing as a district to encourage or not encourage students to take the test to be able to really compare that. So you have to look at the percentage of students who are taking it and the core more and all of the other aspects, and not just compare us to another district straight away by scores.
Thank you. Member Oswald?
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Member Johnston's comments regarding students of color who take the test. I think we need to keep this in focus and not think about comparisons year to year, but recognize this test for what it is. It's a way to get into college, and it's required by most four-year institutions. And so we need to be very aware of that. And if students of color aren't taking the tests, it's one more obstacle for them to get into college. It's also disturbing to me to know that, the scores the composite scores averages by year for Denfeld versus East. East is very college ready. I myself just today looked up composite scores to get into the main U. It's 26. Anything lower is an exception to the rule. Exceptions do happen. UMD is 24. St. Scholastica is 23. UW Superior is, I believe, 20. And Denfeld, the average score is 19.6. So you know that there are less kids that attend there that are college ready and ready to go to a four-year college. We need to find supports, and like the lists that you've created, I do believe we're on a track to do there, and we recognize it, and we're addressing it, and we're trying to work towards it, and it's not perfect, and we'll keep trying until we get it right. But with East average of 23.3, we know that most of those kids that are taking those tests are ready to go on to better, bigger and better things, and so we need to help Denfeld just a little bit more, I think.
Dr. Carey?
Totally appreciating and validating everything you just said, because I agree. So what I'm going to say isn't to disagree with you. I just want to be clear about that. It's just to highlight something else, which is the one beautiful thing I think we have in this state and country is that we do have really strong two-year colleges that do then connect and articulate into four-year colleges. And that lots of kids, I think there's a misconception that going to a two-year college and then continuing on if you desire is somehow not appealing or attractive. And I hope he doesn't mind, but I'll use the example of my own brother who went initially to a two-year college, got his RN, then started working and went back to college and got his four-year RN and is now actually in a doctorate program to become a doctorate of nurse practitioning. And so you can still, if you don't immediately qualify, he did qualify for a four-year university but chose not to. So there are pathways that exist so that even if a student can't get their foot in the door in one place right away, there are still really good options there for them to continue on a successful career path.
Sure. I just want to follow up to say that I did look up Lake Superior colleges, and yeah, they don't have any requirement. They say come and we take you, and that's very open and honest, and they work with what they get. I'm just making a point about being professional. Thank you.
Member Welty, we're actually going to move on so that we can get done with this by 6 o'clock. What I would suggest, I have a lot of questions too, but I let other board members ask. Send your questions to me or to Dr. Lake or Dr. Carey, and we can follow up with getting them answered so that we can be out of here by the required 6 o'clock time. But thank you for a great presentation. Obviously, we all have lots of thoughts and ideas and appreciation for what we have been doing as a district. So good discussion. Going to move on now to the next item on our agenda. Thank you. And we're actually going to, we have a resolution under resolutions concern, right, no? Yep, resolution 2. Support of restricting youth access to flavored tobacco products. And we have an outside presenter here. We're going to have her step up for that piece. So we're going to jump ahead, and then we'll go back to the grant applications. And do you want to introduce this in any way? Or no? Okay. Okay. And this is Pat McCone, who some of you may know. She is a director here of the American Lung Association and actually a national speaker, and has had a career on working with a variety of tobacco-related products. So thank you for taking the time to be with us, Pat.
Should I just jump in?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that Member Harla is the board member who brought this to you for consideration, and unfortunately she was unable to be here this evening, and wanted to share her regrets in not being able to be here after asking you to come.
She owes me, that's all I'll say. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It really does play right into what you're talking about, is making students ready for college and then ready for the workforce. And as our country debates about healthcare costs and workers, being a tobacco user is definitely something against you when you present yourself as a potential future employee. It's the only thing you can ask for as an employer of health behaviors left. I mean, pre-existing conditions you can't ask about, but you can ask smoking status. So it's a nice tie-in. We are working in Duluth to limit access to flavored and other tobacco products to adult-only tobacco stores, and I've provided you with some of the data, both state data and local data, but we know that the one flavor that has increased in use by youth specifically is menthol. Menthol flavor was exempted from federal regulation when other flavored cigarettes were taken off the market. menthol was left in place. It is the flavor that has been targeted to some of our most vulnerable populations, including youth, African Americans, and the GLBTQ community. It is the only product flavor that is a growing market within the tobacco industry. So I brought along just a display of some of the products. This is it candy or is it tobacco? This is what's presented at the point of sale to young people as they enter convenience stores. We have approximately 85 tobacco licenses in the city of Duluth, and we are going to move forward with partners to limit that access to adult-only tobacco stores, of which there are 6. Evenly spread across our city. We've partnered with and had the endorsement of Essentia Health, St. Luke's, CHUM, Community Action, the NAACP. Today we got Health and All Policies, the American Indian Commission on Housing, the Human Rights Commission, and the American Indian Commission of the city. So I am here to ask the school district to say this is also an issue that you would be supportive of in making our community one of the progressive communities that does think about health and all policies and where we place the product that continues to be the #1 killer of adults in our country. So with that, I will answer questions if you have them. I know there's a 6 o'clock timeline, and I did say I'd be short and sweet. So, questions?
Okay. Member Welty?
Thank you, Pat. Good to see you again.
Yep.
I don't see anything that I find particularly disagreeable about this. In fact, I have the same attitude about cigarette smoking as I'm sure you do. I remember my mother at one point asking me to go out and buy her some cigarettes and throwing the money on the floor and saying, "You're asking me to go and help kill you." And I do believe that there's a strong preservational effort on the part of the tobacco industry to make their products look appealing to children, and that's sneaky. And I've enjoyed the advertising that tries to make that clear to kids. Don't know to what extent it sticks or not. You've got a fairly impressive group of people who are supporting this. How many stores will this affect? Will this affect 100 outlets if we put this into effect in the city of Duluth and say only adult smoking places are around? I expect that if we endorse this, we'll start hearing some grumbling from some of those people. What do you anticipate?
So the numbers are there are approximately 85 tobacco licenses in the city of Duluth. Okay. The vast majority are in gas station convenience stores. They're called convenience stores for a reason. We are proposing that these products be placed in adult-only tobacco stores, of which there are currently 6 spread across the city.
Could I ask what the tobacco manufacturers would have to do to make their products still accessible in these other 79 stores?
Oh, the regular Marlboros, anything that's not a menthol flavored would still be in the regular tobacco stores. It's the flavored products, including e-cigarettes, which I know is almost an epidemic among young people. All of those flavored products, which are also available in those tobacco stores, would be taken out of the convenience stores and put into adult-only tobacco stores.
Just a quick comment on the e-cigarettes. Those do manage to get rid of the horrible tars and all the other things that used to be part of regular cigarettes and leave you with nicotine, which is the addictive portion. I think for a lot of people the jury is still out on whether that's bad or not. I've heard that for people getting Alzheimer's it's not so bad to have a hit of nicotine, but that may not be true of an 18 or a 19-year-old or somebody younger. How many of those 86 outlets for cigarette licenses cater to e-cigarette smokers? All of them?
Just about all of them, yes. If they don't have all the juice and liquid, if you're not familiar with the product, there are literally thousands of liquid flavors. Then they have the disposables, which are grape, cherry, etc. Again, something very appealing to young people. I think the thing when you talk about Generation Z, we do not want a public health standard of this is less harmful than the number one killer. We want a public health standard that says, is this better than breathing clean air? And the answer would be no.
Okay. All right. Just note that the resolution is on page 12, and in the now, therefore be it resolved, it's really specific to efforts to reduce access to products such as menthol and other flavored tobacco products. So it's really specific. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
I think you have a lot on your website, if I recall, about this topic, if people want more background information.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will have our board meeting next Tuesday night, and that's where it'll be decided. So our next item then, we're going to go back up then to the grant applications, and we have a number of applications that we applied for and we will be approving later. Assistant Starzecki, do you want to highlight them?
Sure.
Starting with the first one there on Open Your Heart.
Sure. Katie Danielson, our Families in Transition coordinator, has submitted a grant for $3,000 to support students in her program. Stowe Elementary had submitted an application for a grant for fresh fruits and vegetables grant, and that has been approved. We also applied for, on number 3, we applied for a Ojibwe immersion coordinator, and that was recently granted as well, and so that you'll see that information there to support our Ojibwe immersion program. Number 4 is a grant to the Department of Education that Tom Albright helped put together. It was a collaboration with our full-service community schools to expand the work, specifically the work that we're doing after school, to provide more opportunities for students and have transportation opportunities for our 3 schools as part of our full-service community schools. So that's Myers, Lincoln, and Denfeld. We have not got word on whether we have received that grant or not. That was just recently submitted. You'll see Jen Jaros, ECFE, has applied for a grant to support that work. And I think that's everything. Nope, did I miss anything? I think that's everything. Yep.
I have just a couple questions on the number 3, the Dakota and Ojibwe. We had talked about a curriculum writer, coordinator during our budget discussions. Can I just ask who helped write that particular grant?
Do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
I'd have to look just to make sure I'm not missing anybody, but I believe the primary author on that was Edie House, and I believe William House also worked, I assume also along with some of the Ojibwe program staff to craft that grant application.
Excellent. And then my second question was the grant right below there on the Department of Education. Is this a new grant from the MDE? I mean,
Yes.
Okay, that's what I had thought.
This is a new grant, and we felt it was the right fit for our full-service community schools, so that's where that application went.
Excellent. It's really great having staff be involved in so many different grant writings. Superintendent Grunset, and then I'll call on you, Member Oswald.
I just wanted to jump in and say that the Dakota and Ojibwe language revitalization grant came in a little lower than they asked for, and so the district has made up the difference between the grant amount and the cost of this position. I believe it was in the $5,000 to $6,000 range to cover the ask.
Great, thank you. Member Oswald?
I just have a brief question regarding school lunches. Since we're talking fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that. One of the headlines in news this week was New York City public schools offering free lunch for all their students. Is that ever even on the radar of something that we could possibly do?
I too saw that article, and we've had some conversations about it since then. There are a few places in Minnesota who do free lunch for everyone. The thought is that if you make a huge push to make sure that all of your families are filling out the paperwork with the thought that if everyone fills it out, we can have free lunch. But it really depends on how many unidentified families you have. And because when you have a higher percentage of families who are identified, you not only have additional reimbursement for the lunch, it also increases the amount of Title I and Comp Ed funding that each school gets, and with higher percentages, the amount per student increases as well. And so we are in the process of doing the math to see how many additional students would need to be identified for us to be able to have a break-even point. When we looked at St. Paul, because St. Paul went this route too, they lost quite a bit of money when they implemented it because they didn't identify as many students as they hoped. And I wouldn't want us to be in that situation, because then you're trying to find a way to cover the debt. So we are looking into it and doing some math, and if it looks like a viable option for us, we'll move in that direction. I think that more successful districts who are doing that might do it at a school or two that have much higher numbers. So that could be something that we would look at as well.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Then we can move on to action items. Let's see. Regulations, it's a placeholder. And then action items, we already had the presentation. American Lung, placeholder on policies, placeholder on data sharing agreements. Our regular resolution then, under resolutions, acceptance of grant awards. And again, the 4 that are listed here do not include they do. Yeah. All but the full service community schools one that was just submitted. And then the resolution on flavored tobacco. And then lastly, diploma request, and we have 3 this month. And then just future items are policy updates. So we got done quicker than I thought we would, so.
I have.
Do you have a couple additions? Okay.
Just one. I know Melinda checked in with you as we were sitting here about Thursday's special board meeting to canvass the votes. Has been in contact with MSBA since then and said it's too late to move the meeting to noon because it has to be 72 hours before, and we don't have 72 hours left. We're concerned that we won't have a quorum, and so Melinda is hoping that if you were unsure whether you could make it or not, if we could confirm with Melinda if we're going to have a majority. It's too late for anyone to participate from somewhere else, remote, there we go, because that also needs 72-hour notice. We are required to have, to canvass the votes within 48 hours of the election, and so it's not an option, it's a requirement for us to have the meeting, so I'm hopeful that we can identify a quorum to attend the meeting. So again, if you could check in with Melinda.
Dr. Carey?
Just want to let everybody know that at the conclusion of the meeting, we do have a number of our new adopted materials from our reading series here for you to be able to take a look at. I'll stick around, and then if there's anybody that has questions or would like to ask anything, I'll be there to help along with that.
Thank you for bringing the whole display of them so we can kind of do some hands-on looking, so I appreciate that. I'm going to move over to Ben. No, go ahead, Ben. We haven't heard from you yet today.
No, his question is on this topic.
Okay. Member Welty, and then Ben.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Superintendent, is it possible that the canvassing material would be available for tomorrow afternoon? That would be within the, well, again, you have to have the time again. I'll be here.
Ben?
Okay. I had a question about, at the last meeting I had asked if any meetings were held about the other opportunities for the special ed department at Denfeld to sell, and I was wondering if any further meetings or if there's an answer to that. Like, is there? We're going to set it up for late September. Late September? Yeah. Okay. If you want to attend, or? Yeah, I'd like to know when that was. Okay. And just a couple quick questions regarding the health policy. The deli at Denfeld, are they allowed to sell all of their food that they make to sell to students during the lunch periods? That all has to meet, I'm just asking, it all has to meet the USDA standards? And the other one was, can link leaders give candy to their freshmen throughout the day? Is that another no? I just want to make sure to be clear on this.
It's a no on both of those.
Okay.
But that would be good to clarify with both schools, with Hound Pack and Link Leaders.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we will wrap up and take time to go and look at the new series, and then we are meeting again Wednesday for our HR and our business committee at 4:15, right? Just to clarify with everybody. Okay, great. Thank you.